Project Stag episode 3. Making flanges, bending metal, hammering metal and welding. Fortunately this week no sanding. Enjoy. Okay, so on this front valance, as you might remember, we had that weld that ran across, and then we've got all these braces that were done down the front, and then coming up there's a brace mark there, and there's a brace mark over there, and then on the inside as well we've got quite a bit of brazing here. Originally I thought of using a sliding hammer and pulling this up, but I've actually, after a bit of thinking about it, I've actually decided against that. Actually thinking of getting rid of all these brace welds and taking this panel, cutting through where it was welded in the past, cutting that weld out, getting all the braces out, removing this panel, and then making a new panel, or basically fixing up this panel and get these edges. Don't know if you're going to be able to see it on camera, but there's quite a roll in the panel here, so thinking of getting that sorted out at the same time. When I've got that panel off, I can bring these dents on the side of a weld out as well and get this back in line again, and we can work it up. Fortunately this part, which would be a bit of a difficult part to panel beat, that's not a problem. Our main damage is in this area here. Other thing what I was thinking about doing it, welding it up, is I'm not a fan of braces on body work. They tend to crack, so I'm thinking while I've got it off, I might as well then clean up. If need be, I can weld a new lip onto the front of this panel, and we can take it from there and see what we do. Okay, so in the time lapse you would have seen me climbing in with the angle grinder around this edge. That is all because of the brazing running around here. So it's one of the reasons I don't like using brazing. By design, brazing flows in between metal and makes a solid joint, which it's what it's supposed to do. It's just in a case like this where you need to split the panel again to do a future repair, you can't get into the brazing. That said, this panel is, to be honest, it is quite rough, especially around the back. As you can see, there was welding done. So the previous repair, they cut it out in the corner. They cut it out in that corner and then re-welded it back into place. But you can see there's quite some warping in a couple of areas. So I'm actually thinking of replacing this lip in any case. So if I'm going to replace this lip, then I might as well replace the outer lip as well and do it all properly. First thing I am going to do though, just finish it cleaning up here, do a little bit of panel beating on this side, and then we'll do some panel work on this panel here. Also want to have a look at what's going on here, because it feels like the flange was bent over on the inside. I just want to see what's going on there, and then see how I can do the spot welds without having welds on this outer face. So there's actually a joint that runs through the car here, and that's supposed to be visible, so I'd like to keep that. When I'm done, I want to have that line visible again. Other thing that I was quite concerned about was rust underneath here, but this panel looks fairly decent, looks pretty good. Is a little bit of flaking, but nothing too concerning. And then there is a little bit of panel work that I can do here, but I'm not going to spend too much time trying to fix this. My main concern now is to clean up this flange face, clean up that flange face, and then we'll start panel beating on this one. Okay, so sometimes doing things like this reveals a lot of things that you missed before. For instance, if you look there, we've got some burn through there. So basically what happens when you do a weld where you've got a piece of plate and you weld into a corner like that, you steal a bit of metal from the top that melts down into the weld, and there the metal has gotten so thin that it's actually it's not a burn, but it's not a rust either, so it's not structurally bad, but we need to replace that as well. So considering the amount of damage from the previous weld, I'm actually thinking of making a whole new strip, giving it the lip on it as well, and then curving a new bit that will basically go into the section, and then I'll re-weld it further up so that the lip going from the bottom of the car up into this panel will be one solid new lip. I'm thinking that would be the better idea. There is a bit of it's quite thin here, so to weld that is going to be an endless mission. So I think I'm going to replace that whole probably bottom half of this channel with a new piece of metal that will bend, and then once we bend, we'll run it through the stretcher and we'll give it a bit of an arc to follow the car's arc, and then we'll spot weld that into place to hold it in place while we work on the other stuff, and get the front panel mounted back in place again. There is quite a bit of brazing on this front bit, so I'm not going to reuse the old spot weld marks. I'm going to try and do new spot weld marks and miss the brazing marks. Reason for that is weld and the braze do not mix. So everywhere where you've got the brazing material sticking out, a weld will not take on that, and it will mess you around for hours on end. So we'll fix that up. I know that looks rusty. I'll do a rust treatment there before I put the panel back in. I'm going to have to get in underneath on this side as well, without lifting this part of the panel off. I don't want to take this part off, so I'll work purely on that part and get that right. My biggest concern now on this one is to get this front lip nice and straight again. So that's going to be my next mission, is to pull this all straight and get this all straightened out and back. Okay, so this lip, I don't know if you remember, you would have seen that this area here was dented and this lip was basically flattened out, so that sharp edge there was missing. So through the magic of hammer and chisels, I managed to get that sharp edge back in again, and I've got the basic shape of it going back in and really well again. So the next step would obviously then be the front lip and the rear lip, but I think I'm going to start on the rear lip. As I said, there's quite a bit of rust and weld damage on the rear lip, so I'm going to make a new lip that will go in here. This I will show the bending and rolling process on this lip. That I will show on camera. That might be a bit interesting, so let's get into it. Okay, so basically what I've done here, I've taken a piece of sheet metal and I've measured out the width of the rear of this panel, and then I'll cut this out. Those are my fault marks where I want my flange to be. I've measured the thickness of the flange on the car, so we're going to transfer that. I've transferred that measurement onto here. We'll give this a 90-degree bend. After we've done the bend, we'll run it through this shrinker stretcher, and that will give us this, using the shrinker stretcher will give us this curve in the back of the panel here. The rusted bit will then be cut out. We'll weld the fresh piece in. This is going to be a bit of a tricky weld because it's not on a car. It's going to be fairly easy to warp or twist, so we're going to have to be very careful with that weld. So that part I'll probably do on time lapse, and then once we've got this support in, then I want to quickly planish this area where we've got all those dents. Most of them's out, but there's still too much or too many dents that I don't want to go into with body filler. So I'm going to give us a bit of a planish, and then after that we should be good to go to mount this back on the car. The front lip I'll do on the car itself, and then I'll use the thicker grinding disc to roll over that edge and get that edge right again. So like I said, this is our new flange side, so we're going to stretch this side in. So basically what stretching means, we're going to shrink this side in. So basically what that means is we're going to crimp using this tool. We're going to basically pull that metal into itself until our curve matches up to the car. As you can see, we've already got a fairly decent curve on it, so I'm just going to go test it and see if it lines up. Okay, might have a little bit too much curve on this side, so I'm just going to change dies and then pull out a little bit of it on this side. Ardendorf, if you're watching this, I really could do with another one of these. Okay, so this die basically does exactly the opposite of what the other one did, where the other one pulled the metal into itself. This is called a stretcher, so it actually expands the metal a little bit. If you look at that, see if the camera is going to allow me to show it, but there you can see we've got a perfectly fitting new flange for the panel. Okay, so next step will now be to replace that existing flange. I'm going to probably do that on the car, so that I can align the height of the flange with that rear panel, tag it in a couple of spots so that I know, or mark it, so that I know where my flange needs to be, and then I can put it down like that. Okay, so the flange is stag welded into place. I'm very happy with how everything lines up. I'm even more happy with how the flange is lining up inside the engine bay. And I'm even more happy with how the seam is lining up where we're welding it back into place. So the long irritating part now will be to fill up all those welds and get that all cleaned up and ground down, and then from there we can tackle the next job. Okay, so majority of the welding is done. New flanges in place. If you look over here, we've got a very decent line up. Almost. There we go. We've got a decent line up over there, so that will be well hidden. It is a solid flange. It's not welded like it used to be. Everything sits and lines up really nicely. Basically I just need to, I've got a couple of pinholes that I want to close up on the welds, and then a final grind down, and then I can get going on the front flange. But there we are. Okay, right, so on the front facing flange, I think what I'm going to do, now you'll see I've got a piece of scrap metal that I had. I marked it out, as you can see there, the flange length, but I don't want to cut it off until I've got it on the car fitted, to make sure that I've got a decent lap on the front. I don't want to be short or too long, so the easiest is just to spot it in place, and then goes my man eater, is to spot it in place, and then afterwards I'll cut it off. I think also, if I look at the alignment on the body, what I am going to do, instead of welding the flange onto the front, I'm actually going to weld it on top of this plate. In doing so, I give myself a little bit more room to get rid of this dent running down the middle of the car, and I also give myself a little bit more meat to grind down to get that fold that's on the front lip, by basically building it up with a weld and then grinding it down with a grinding wheel to get that same fold going. Okay, so I actually closed shop for the day, but my OCD got better of me, or got the better of me. Remember I showed you earlier that there was a gap here. I'm not exactly sure what the train of thought was on this one, but this plate looks like it tore off on that edge there and was bent in underneath the fender. So I'm not 100% sure what the idea there was, but what did happen was I had a very ugly gap on this corner, but I was going to weld the plate in here in any case. So yeah, I'll want to have a look at that and see what the idea was there, and then figure out a way, because there's no way to get to this plate from underneath or from that side to do spot welds here. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to do those spot welds, not the way it was done with the brazing. I'm not a fan of brazing, so I want to figure out how I'm going to do those. Okay, so we've got the new flange welded up in the front. The customer's bringing me the top beading so that I can make sure that my profile here is right. So then after that I'll do fix up all the little spots and pinholes that I've got here, and we'll clean that out and we'll get this body line profile right. I've got a slight up curve here that I'll see how I'm going to take that out. That is stretched metal, so I'm thinking maybe a slit through the top and then bending it back down and welding it in should take care of that. I'd rather take out more here and then stretch the metal a bit to get it back into shape, but I'll see how I'm going to do that. Alignment front and back is perfect. I'm really happy with that, but that brings us to the next point, which is over here. This body line here is completely not great. So you can see we've got a massive gap here, and then that panel there does a bit of a dog leg as well. And then on the inside, this is the flange that I spoke about earlier that looks like it tore out of here, and then there is a bit of brazing up here, so I'll have to clean out that brazing and then weld that flange back into place and get that line running from there down to here straight, and then make sure this line here is straight, although I do think that is pretty spot on already, but that I'll have to finalize. So my issue is on this corner here and in this line running down here, so I'm trying to decide what's going to be my angle of attack on getting this line and this part straightened out and squared up again. There's a couple of ways to do that, and I'm thinking probably the best way would be to fill up this edge and then grinding, so basically running a weld bead all around this edge, filing and grinding that down and straight, and getting that lined up so that we've got a decent seam on the inside here. I think that's probably going to be the best solution for this problem. So let me have a go at it and yeah, see what we can do. Okay, so that edge there we've now got fixed up and good. We've got a small little dent over there, and then somewhere, yeah, we've got another dent, but nothing major and easy to fix. So the next step now would be to clean up and bring this edge up and get this edge in line with the body's line. So I'm trying to decide whether I'm just going to run a bead weld and then grind it down and smooth it out, or if I'm going to weld in a filler rod and use the filler rod to grind down. Using a filler rod gives you almost by itself a round edge, although I think the filler rod would burn away on such a tight corner. So I'm not 100% sure yet what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to try and figure that one out now, and then we'll take up the next step, and then we can start looking at mounting this plate back in place. And then once it's back in place, we can start looking at getting the hump out of the panel. Okay, so as you saw in the time lapse, I ended up doing the wire bead on the edge, and I'm actually pretty glad that I did. It came out really nice. We've got a nice straight line through. It looks like it should. I'm going to call that one done. So next step is probably going to be looking at mounting this panel. There's a couple of things that I want to look at. I've got a couple of small panels in this corner that I want to quickly fix up, and then I'm going to weld this panel into place. I'm not going to bore you with all of that, so I'll be back, or I'll film again after I've mounted the panel back in place, and then we can start looking at taking out this bump in the middle of the panel. Okay, so we welded back into place. It looks good. Happy with how it's going so far. Fortunately, the customer was able to bring me the beading for the front here, so I can adjust and line up and bend and pull where I need to get the lip on the beading to be in the right place. So that's going to help a lot. I'm really happy with how this gap came right. That's basically spot on with the other side, so really happy with that. Messy weld on that side. Once it's cooled down, I want it to cool by itself, and I want to force cool down on it, so I'll let it cool down naturally, and once it's cooled down properly, I'll clean up the weld. I was worried about it caving. It did cave a little bit, not as bad as I thought it would, but it did cave. So I might have to pull that weld up a little bit. Okay, so that will be it for this episode. As you can hear, there's bit of a storm brewing. It is fairly late at night, so we're going to call it quits. Got two little issues still on the front that seam down the middle, and then I'm just not 100% happy with how the beading sits on the cowl. I want to change that a little bit just to get the cowl more in line with the beading. But that's minor quick things. It's probably going to be I'll probably do that tomorrow off camera. And then Monday we're going to start with the rest of the damage on her. So yeah, we're going to call that an episode. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, and please, as always, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Ask us a question, drop advice, anything like that. Always welcome. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.